welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're really digging into a couple of fascinating stories. They're preserved in ancient texts, specifically commentary linked to verses from the Dhammapada.
Right, and these aren't just abstract teachings.
No, not at all. They actually feature the Buddha himself, interacting with people. Very different people, actually.
Yeah, one is his own father, King Suddhodana.
And the other, a renunciant, but from a completely different spiritual tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission here is to unpack these stories, using just the details in the texts, to see what surprising things they reveal. Things about, well, true conduct, status, and what a dedicated life really means according to these narratives.
It's a great pairing, because both stories use this seemingly simple act, begging for alms, to get at a much deeper question, about what truly defines someone's spiritual standing.
Okay, let's jump into the first one then. The story of King Suddhodana. This is about the Buddha's first visit back home to Kapilavatthu after his enlightenment.
Right. And you might imagine this grand homecoming, but the text paints a, slightly more complex picture.
How so?
It says his relatives, and this includes his father, the king, they initially kind of held back.
Held back.
There was this reluctance, maybe pride. It stopped them from immediately bowing or showing him full respect like you'd expect.
Huh. So even though he's the Buddha, his own family is hesitant because of status and pride, maybe?
Seems like it. So what does the Buddha do?
What does he do?
According to this commentary, he performed a miracle right there.
A miracle?
Yep. Created a jeweled walkway in the air and walked back and forth on it.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a statement.
Definitely dramatic.
And how did that land with the family and the king?
Well, the text says that did the trick. It broke through their reservations. They suddenly saw him clearly, understood who he was, and paid him proper respect. King Suddhodana actually led them in doing so.
Yeah, okay. And there's this interesting detail mentioned here, too, about a special kind of rain, Pokavasa rain.
Yes, that fell during this gathering. And the Buddha apparently connected it back to the Vesantara Jataka, saying this rain fell during a similar gathering of relatives way back then.
Adds a sort of mythical, auspicious layer to it all.
It really does. But here's the really striking part, what the text says happens next. Even after the miracle, even after all the bowing and respect,
Yeah.
none of the relatives, not even the king, formally invited the Buddha and his monks for a meal the next day.
Seriously. That seems like a massive oversight, or maybe just an assumption.
Well, the king's reaction suggests assumption. The text says he thought, my son wouldn't possibly go anywhere else. He'll come to my house.
Okay.
So he goes back to the palace totally confident and gets this huge meal prepared for 20,000 monks, apparently, just expecting them all to turn up.
Right. But the Buddha didn't go to the palace the next day, did he?
Nope. He did something else entirely.
What did he do?
Instead of going home to the palace, he led the monks into the city for the alms round.
The alms round, so begging.
Exactly. The text notes he first checked, mentally, what past Buddhas did when visiting their father's city. Did they go straight home or go for alms? And he saw they always went for alms house to house systematically. So he did the same, followed that precedent, went door to door.
And that must have caused a stir.
Oh, absolutely. That's what finally gets the king's attention. Rahula's mother sees him from the palace roof and tells the king.
Oh boy. How does the king react?
Predictably, maybe. He's flustered. The text says he straightens his cloak, rushes out.
Finds the Buddha.
Pays respect again, but then just lets loose. Expresses this deep embarrassment, this shame.
Shame. Why?
Seeing his son, the son who used to travel in golden palanquins, now begging for food in his own capital. He actually asks the Buddha, why are you destroying me? Why are you causing me such shame?
Wow. So he felt personally attacked by this almost.
Very much so. He's clearly seeing it all through the lens of royal status, family honor, social propriety, what looks proper.
And this is where the Buddha offers that reframing you mentioned.
Exactly. A really powerful one.
So how does the Buddha respond to his father saying he's being destroyed?
He says very calmly, I'm not shaming you at all. He explains he's not actually following the king's lineage, the royal Vamso. He says, I'm following my own lineage.
His own lineage. What does he mean by that? Not the royal family.
No. He clarifies his lineage is the lineage of, countless thousands of Buddhas, all of whom lived by begging for alms.
Ah. So he's defining himself not by his birth, but by this timeless spiritual practice.
Precisely. By the path of enlightenment itself.
And this distinction, this idea of his true lineage, leads right into the first verse he speaks, doesn't it? Suddhodanavatthu.
Yes, it does. And the commentary really unpacks this verse, explaining what each part means right here in this specific situation.
Okay, break it down for us. Utiye.
That refers directly to the alms food one gets after rising and, standing at people's doorways, the physical act of the alms round.
Got it.
Yeah.
And napamajaya, not being negligent.
Right. But negligent in what? Here, it means not being negligent in the practice of that alms round.
So how does one practice it negligently?
Like trying to only get delicious food or skipping houses instead of going systematically.
So going house to house in order, that is being diligent, not negligent.
Exactly. That's the diligent practice. Which leads to the next phrase. Dhamma sukhartakare should practice the Dhamma well conducted.
And in this context?
It means ditching those improper ways of seeking food and actually practicing the alms round itself as well-conducted Dhamma by doing it systematically, house to house.
Okay. And the payoff for doing it right. Dhammakari sukhasati.
The Dhamma follower lives happily, meaning the person who practices this alms-begging Dhamma correctly, systematically, finds happiness, not just now, but in the next life, too, in all their activities.
Right. And the final line. Nasta dukkhadatgaka.
Should not practice that ill-conducted. It's the warning. Don't do the alms round badly. Don't go to inappropriate places, like houses of ill repute, mentioned in the commentary. Practice it well, not badly.
So the whole verse basically takes this thing the king sees as utterly shameful begging and completely flips it. It's not low status. It's actually a diligent, systematic spiritual practice that leads to real happiness.
Exactly. It redefines the whole action.
And what was the effect on King Suddhodana after hearing this explanation?
The text is quite clear. It says at the end of this teaching, the king attained the fruit of stream entry, Sodapati.
Wow. Right there on the spot.
Seems so. The teaching obviously hit home, completely changed his perspective.
What a story. Really challenges those surface-level assumptions about status and appearance.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's move to the second story. This one also involves begging, but from a different angle. It's set at Jetavana Monastery.
Right. And the main character isn't royalty, but a brahmana, someone who had renounced worldly life, but in a different tradition, not the Buddha's.
Okay, so what happens with him?
Well, he's observing the Buddha's disciples. He sees them going out for alms, and he hears people calling them bhikkhu. And his thought process, according to the text, is pretty straightforward. He thinks, hey, I live by begging too. They beg. They're called bhikkhu. I beg. So I should also be called a bhikkhu.
So he's focusing purely on the external action again, like begging equals bhikkhu. Simple equation in his mind.
Exactly. He sees the activity, assumes it defines the title.
So what does he do about it?
He goes right up to the Buddha, makes a direct request.
Which is?
Venerable Gautama, he says, I also live by begging for alms. Please call me a bhikkhu. He's basically asking for the label based only on that one shared behavior.
Okay. And how does the Buddha handle this request? Does he say, sure, you beg, you're a bhikkhu?
No, quite the opposite, actually. Again, the Buddha looks deeper than the surface action.
What does he say?
He states very clearly, I don't call someone a bhikkhu just because they beg from others.
Okay.
He goes on to explain that someone who takes up and practices what the text calls poisonous or uneven dhamma, essentially wrong actions, wrong conduct, unethical behavior. That person is not called a bhikkhu. Doesn't matter if they beg or not.
So the title isn't earned just by the physical act. And it's definitely not earned if your overall conduct is flawed. So what does make someone a bhikkhu, according to the Buddha here?
This is the crucial part. The Buddha gives a much deeper internal definition. He says a true bhikkhu is someone who has driven out or abandoned both merit puññā and demerit papa.
Both. Not just the bad stuff.
Both. They live the holy life, brahmacharya, and crucially, they travel in the world understanding. The word is sukora, which the commentary explains means with knowledge or wisdom, yedhyana.
Of understanding what?
Understanding all phenomena sabasokar, things like the aggregates, the khandhas, the conditioned nature of reality, seeing things as they really are.
Wow. Okay, that's miles away from just someone who begs. It's about wisdom, letting go of grasping onto any outcome, good or bad, and living a certain way based on understanding.
Exactly. It's an internal state achieved through practice and insight.
And this leads directly into the second verse he recites, starting natena bhikkhuhood.
It does. And again, the commentary helps clarify its meaning. Natena bhikkhuhood yavata bhikkhate pare.
Which means?
Not by that is he a bhikkhu, merely because he begs from others.
Yeah.
Simple begging doesn't make you a bhikkhu. Straight up.
Okay. Next part. Visastamada Samadaya bhikkhuhood natavata.
Having taken up poisonous or uneven dhamma, he is not a bhikkhu by that much. So if you're practicing wrong conduct, even while you're begging, that absolutely disqualifies you from the title.
Got it. And then the positive definition comes in the rest of the verse.
Right, the longest part. Yoda punyanya papaneka vaetva brahmakaryava sahaloke karati save bhikhuti vukutipti.
Let's break that down slowly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yoda, whoever here in this punyanyanka papanaga vaetva, having abandoned both merit and demerit. And the commentary adds this is done through the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, and the holy life.
So it's an active process of letting go.
Yes. Brahmakaryava is one committed to the holy life. Sakhaya loka karati travels in the world understanding. Understanding all phenomena, sabasakhare, with knowledge, jnana.
And that person.
Save bhikkhuti vukutiti. He indeed is called a bhikkhu.
And why? Does the commentary add anything?
It does. It adds, essentially, because the defilements, the mental impurities have been broken or destroyed by that knowledge, by that wisdom.
So this verse couldn't be clearer. Being a bhikkhu isn't a job title you get for performing an action. It's a description of an inner state, someone transformed by practice, wisdom, and letting go.
Exactly. Letting go of clinging to results, good or bad, and seeing reality clearly.
And what was the impact of this teaching on the people listening?
Similar to the first story, actually. The text says many attain the fruits of the path stream entry and even higher stages.
So it wasn't just the Brahmana who was perhaps confused about this.
Seems like the teaching resonated broadly. It clarified a fundamental point for many people there.
Okay, so let's try and connect these two stories now. They both revolve around this act of begging for alms, bhikkha. But the Buddha runs into two very different kinds of misunderstandings about what that act, or the person doing it, really signifies.
Absolutely. With his father, King Suddhodana, the whole issue is social status versus perceived lowliness.
Right. The king's totally caught up in the external clash. Royal lineage versus, street begging, family honor, public image.
His focus is all outward, on appearance and hierarchy.
Then you have the Brahmana. His misunderstanding is different.
Yeah, his is about mistaking the action for the essence. He thinks, I do the thing, so I deserve the title.
He zeroes in on that one superficial action, begging, and thinks that alone confers the status of bhikkhu. He ignores the inner reality, the conduct, the wisdom part.
And in both cases, what does the Buddha do? He gently but really firmly redirects their attention away from the external status, specific actions, titles, and towards the internal.
Just what really matters.
Yeah, your inner state, your wisdom, whether you're genuinely practicing the Dhamma correctly. That's what defines true lineage, true status, like being a real bhikkhu, and even true happiness, that sukha sati.
And a key part of that genuine practice, highlighted especially in the second story, is this idea of letting go, not just of bad stuff to merit, but even letting go of attachment to good stuff to merit, and cultivating that deep understanding, that sukhaya.
It's a radical shift in perspective from how we usually value things. These stories really drive home that principle. Don't judge by the cover. Superficial appearances, job titles, outward actions, they can be really misleading.
Yeah.
The real meaning, the real value comes from the state of mind underneath, the intention, the wisdom, the actual inner transformation.
It's amazing how these ancient commentaries use these everyday scenes of family visit, a simple request to illustrate such profound points. They show us that real practice, real status, isn't about looking the part or having the right label. It's about the inner work.
The cultivation of wisdom.
So reflecting on all this, if being a bhikkhu, according to these texts, isn't just about the physical act of begging, but about this deep internal shift, abandoning grasping, seeing clearly with knowledge, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, think about titles or roles we use all the time in our world today. Doctor, teacher, parent, leader, maybe even things like environmentalist or activist. Could it be that these titles also point to something much deeper than just the job description or the outward actions we associate with them?
Like maybe the real meaning is tied to an inner state, a commitment, a kind of understanding that we often just gloss over.
Exactly. Something to think about, maybe. What do those labels we use or aspire to really mean beyond the surface?